Okay, first off, we're not even dating. Second of all, I don't even like him. Third, he's probably running out of fuel soon, so God knows if he'll ever make it back here.
I'm back, bitches!
Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. And we're back! Thank you for being patient. It was a weird couple of days there. But yeah, I'm going to try to keep the live show going while running about. And I'll be sure to remember to put something in the community tab next time we have an unscheduled break. Anyway, the world chose to be incredibly interesting while I was out. And I wanted to talk to y'all about some of these things. How's everybody doing, by the way? Rustbox, delighted to see you. Very, very glad to be bringing the gang back together for a stream on this Thursday. So, the biggest issue happening is still the same. It's the debt ceiling. The supreme, rather I should say, the biggest issues happening are still the same. It's the debt ceiling. It's the Supreme Court, and it's the corruption within our government in the United States. These are all issues that are solvable with one thing: getting rid of Republicans. They are right now the biggest problem that the country faces. That will annoy me later on. They're the biggest problem the country faces, but they are not. They're fortunately a very surmountable problem, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the specifics of what they are doing that is corrupt, what they are doing that is anti-freedom, anti-decency, and I thought we might talk a little bit then about how we can talk with others about this, how we can use this information to sway people. Let's start recording, and we'll get to it. So the biggest issue right now that I see with politics in the United States is it's straight out of the fascist playbook. It's the Gish gavel. It's where Republicans are flooding the media with scandal in order to cover up the whole of their scandals. Let's break it down. Let's talk about just a few things that need to be dealt with, because you don't need to memorize everything about these punks. All you need to do is know enough about them to know when you must vote against them. That's it. On the left, it's worth splitting hairs. On the left right now, it is worth having detailed discussions about policy and blah, 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 blah. The reason being there's a choice to be made, but there's no choice after you've decided there's no way in hell I'm voting Republican. So your goal as somebody who wants America to remain a democracy, to be a safe place to exist, your goal should be to learn a couple of things about Republicans so that you can make a very strong case. Let's start with corruption on the Supreme Court. Conservatives in the United States right now are bribing Supreme Court justices, and they're doing that so that they can get opinions that go against logic, that go against the spirit of the law. Let's listen to Tom Hartman talking a little bit about why that is, why suddenly this crop of Supreme Court justices are absolute yes men for the people who are in charge.
Court. back in the day, in Federalist number 78, Alexander Hamilton wrote at some length. The Federalist Papers were a series of newspaper articles that were published mostly in the summer and fall of 1787 and through 1788. In the fall and winter of 1787 and throughout 1788, that were basically sales pitches to the states to ratify the Constitution, which happened in 1789, and that's when we officially became the modern United States of America.
So real quick, this is why I adore Tom Hartman, right? I mean, obviously, he's got great takes as well. But he does the same thing Maddow does. He acknowledges the fact that not all of us have a degree in American history, and not all of us spend all day working on this stuff. And even if we do, sometimes we're a little dumb. So it's helpful to get an explanation like this. So yes, he's talking about the Federalist Papers and what that means for the intent of the Supreme Court, as in why we have the structure we do have with the Supreme Court.
George Washington got elected, and the Supreme Court was created, and all that kind of, by Congress, and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting, by the way, the Supreme Court did not exist at the creation of our country. The Constitution does not create a Supreme Court. Article 3 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to create the Supreme Court, which they did, which I find fascinating. In any case, Alexander Hamilton argued strongly, and it's in the Constitution, I mean, he argued successfully as well, that Supreme Court justices should be on the court for life. He calls it permanency in office. And he said the reason why, well, he said nothing can contribute so much to the court's firmness and independence as permanency in office. This quality may therefore be justly regarded as an indispensable ingredient in its constitution, and in a great measure as the citadel of the public justice and the public security. He goes on to say, if then the courts of justice are to be considered as the bulwarks of a limited constitution against legislative encroachments, this consideration will afford a strong argument for the permanent tenure of judicial offices, since nothing will contribute so much as this to that independent spirit in the judges, which must be essential to the faithful performance of so arduous a duty. The whole point, in other words, was if we give judges lifetime tenure, so they no longer have to rely on a political party, they no longer have to rely on political donors, they no longer have to rely on the support of partisan newspapers, then they will do what they believe is right, rather than what helps their friends or helps them or helps their political party.
All right. So the idea behind the Supreme Court, he's saying they have lifetime appointments so that they are not pleading with somebody, some faction, to keep them in power. However, the problem arises when they are being influenced in other ways. And he's, should we skip it? No. I'm gonna skip ahead just a little bit. So he discusses then all kinds of conservative judges, like politically conservative judges, who then went on to interpret the law in favor of leftist causes. And the link is in the description if you want to check out the whole clip. Look, any view that goes to a left channel is going to have compounding positive effects. Check it out, by all means. Check out Tom Hartman's whole segment. But I'm going to skip over that, because then he goes into, you can just take it as given. There were plenty of conservative, or rather judges appointed by conservatives who went on to give sane legal decisions. Such as the dissenting opinion in Citizens United. But then he goes on to this part that I want to play for you. Why then are our current justices giving these wild and, frankly, let's just call it like it is, wrong interpretations of the law in our country, of the structure of the law in our country.
Then Jerry Ford nominates John Paul Stevens in 1975. John Paul Stevens, famously dissented to Citizens United, famously dissented to Bush v. Gore. Again, became, and in fact, he wrote the Chevron versus NRDC case, which is where the Chevron deference came out of, which I talked about last week. This is the doctrine that the Supreme Court created that said that, if a regulatory agency hires scientists and comes up with something and says this is how it should be, then that's how it should be. The court should defer to them. Thus, the
crazy,
deference. Right? So yeah, John Paul Stevens, and then of course, finally George Herbert Walker Bush put David Souter on the bench, and David Souter, who John Sununu, the Republican governor of New Hampshire, which is where Souter was from, said it'll be a home run for conservatives. And what did Souter do? Well, he voted in Planned Parenthood versus Casey in favor of abortion rights for women.
So then what happened?
He joined John Paul Stevens in opposing the court's handing the 2000 election to George W. Bush, even though he lost the election by 500,000 votes.
I do want to say real quick, that Republican projection is part of that. You just know that Republicans saw that and said to themselves, well, Democrats must be stealing elections. I mean, after all, we steal elections. That must be how you get elected. It couldn't possibly be that we are a despised group of villains. Oy. But, Tom, tell us then, why now? Why do we have this corruption now?
So what happened was after these four guys got on the court, the billionaire class, the right-wing billionaires, were like, we can't let this happen again. And they started pouring money into the Federalist Society and other groups that would make sure that judges were genuine conservatives. Now, all these guys were actually genuine conservatives at the time they were put on the bench. But more importantly, that once people get on the bench, that there would be a steady, regular, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever flow of money to them. John Roberts' wife made over $10 million. Amy Coney Barrett's husband's law firm is now booming, and he's getting rich off it.
There it is.
Sam Alito travels to Europe for luxury trips and gets huge speaking fees. And, don't get me started on Clarence Thomas. Make sure that there's a steady flow of money and gifts to these guys to keep them conservative. And this has corrupted the court. And the corrupted court is now corrupting American democracy. So we've got to do something about this. I think the things we have to do are fairly straightforward. We need to, number one, we need to expand the court. Number two, we need to make exceptions to what the court can rule on to basically reverse Citizens United and say corporations aren't people. We need to do something about the shadow docket. I mean, there's a bunch of things that can be done. But, as Adam Schiff said, our nation's highest court is not a conservative court because a conservative court would have respect for precedent, and this court doesn't. This is a radical, reactionary court. And Congress needs to do something about it. Obviously, it's not going to happen this year, but we need to get ready for after the next election.
And Tom Hartman ends it with what I think is the most important takeaway. We need to win in 2024. People that give a damn about principles, about things actually functioning in a fair and decent way. People who aren't just using the law as an excuse to attack groups they don't like. We need to win in 2024. And when we win, we need to do so with a plan. 1 second, I apologize for the sound. There we go. We need to do so with a plan. The win in 2020 was a partial victory. America realized that Trump was what he looked like and responded appropriately. They put somebody else in office. But we didn't follow through. We had 2 years where we could have had incredible change with the right pressure put on to Democrats. But this awakening that we had in regards to Republicans, we had too late in regards to Democrats. It's not enough to elect the right people. Now we see. You have to elect the right people and then use them. MAGA has done a fantastic job with this. They understand how this works now. And the way they came to understand it is that groups funded by right-wing billionaires and some of the more extreme church organizations in the country, they organized people. We need to take it upon ourselves to do that organizing. We need to win in 2024, and we need to make it clear to our elected officials what they have been elected to do. That means in 2023, hey, start in the summer, baby. We need to go to the people that are going to be running and talk about these things. Now, you'll have an easy job of it if you've got a Democrat in your area who is running for re-election. You'll know who to talk to. Say, if you want my vote, you should know I am voting for somebody who is going to put restrictions on the Supreme Court to make it illegal for them to take bribes. You need to be very clear with your candidate what they need to do to please you. In addition, people that are going to be running, you should encourage them to run on a platform of court reform. Because until we get that, we are going to be at the mercy of people who take bribes. So whoever's doing the bribing will be our masters. Pay attention to who's running in your area. Be in contact with them. Save their email. Save their phone number. And remember that they are not there merely for a general gist of what you want. They are there to do specifically what you want. So tell them, so they know. Let's see what the Wicked community has to say. Zix, hello. Are you going to cover the House GOP's official enforcer? Maybe. I'm not sure who the House GOP's official enforcer is. Republican Congressman Clay Higgins needs to be arrested now, says Zix 1326. Think Santos is scum? This guy's the GOP's literal enforcer. My friend, I will do a video on that ASAP. That'll be the very next thing I work on after this episode. That is fascinating. Perd Beer says, I don't think you can call them yes men. They believe in their ideology and value it more than law. I would say both are true, actually. I would point to Clarence Thomas, for example, who his ideology, as far as I can tell, is that money in his bank account is good, and he will do anything to live comfortably. He is married to Ginny Thomas, and expressed a willingness to undo the very laws that preserve his right to have his marriage to Ginny Thomas recognized. These people do not care about principles for all. They may have personal ideologies. They may choose to push their ideologies onto others when given the opportunity. But when the people that keep them rich tell them to do something, they will do it. All in all, I do have to say, though, let's try this. All in all, I do have to say, just like America first got an accurate view of what war really is when Vietnam was televised, we're now getting an accurate view of what politics really are, now that it's interesting. In the past, all that interesting stuff still existed, but it wasn't accessible. Things like this didn't exist. And while I think it's a mighty bold statement for me to suggest that this specific show is the one that has people interested in politics, I'm talking about like Sam Cedar. I'm talking about the Young Turks. I'm talking about things that cover the nitty-gritty, things that break it down, and are not being sponsored by the very people that put politicians in power. So I think we are on an ugly upswing. I think we are crawling out of the muck, and we're only aware of all of the muck because we see it dripping off us now. And thank God for these kids that are out there, because I'll tell you, if we can survive as a country long enough for millennials and Gen Z to become the major voting bases, a whole lot of our problems are going to go away in an election cycle. But we're already at the point. I mean, we wonder where this fascism comes from. We're already at the point where the Republican nonsense it doesn't hold up. They will never get enough popular vote to exist in a fair electoral system, which is why they've been attacking our electoral system. Got another one for you I want to check out. Ooh. All right. There we go. Let's do a proper intro. What do you say? There's a gentleman named Mehdi Hassan. Got a show on MSNBC. I think it's a horse race between Mehdi and Chris Hayes for who's got the best cable news presence. Ali Velshi is somewhere in there as well. But what I like so much about Mehdi Hassan is he breaks down tangible things, like actionable things, and when you get something like the debate over the debt ceiling, where one side says X and one side says Y, he will often do something like he showed on his show yesterday, which is a debate between two learned people who are going to present reasonable arguments, or at least the best arguments they can, for either topic, or rather either position. I would like us to look at this, and I have a slightly different interpretation. I have a different prescription that I recommend we suggest to our representatives that they pursue. But let's look at the debate, and you can hear the best arguments I've seen so far for just going around the non-functioning MAGA hostage takers in Congress. Here's Mehdi Hassan.
I'm no lawyer, So let's talk to some folks who are. Joining me now for an actual debate are two of the country's top legal and constitutional minds who have competing New York Times op-eds on this topic. Lawrence Tribe is a constitutional law emeritus professor at Harvard Law School, co-author of To End a Presidency, The Power of Impeachment. He has advised multiple Democratic presidents on constitutional issues, and last week, when Joe Biden was discussing the possible use of the 14th Amendment, he name-checked Professor Tribe. In a recent New York Times essay, he writes, Mr. Biden must tell Congress in no uncertain terms and as soon as possible, before it's too late to avert a financial crisis, that the United States will pay all its bills as they come due. On the other side of the debate, Michael W. McConnell is a professor at Stanford Law, as well as the director for the school's Constitutional Law Center. He's also a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution and a former judge for the 10th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. His New York Times op-ed on the 14th Amendment is headlined, "The Case for Violating the Debt Limit is Dangerous Nonsense." Thank you both for joining me today. I appreciate you being here. Michael, let me start with you. You heard me make the case for using the 14th Amendment, but I'm no lawyer, although I did mention a bunch of legal experts who say the 14th Amendment is a real and viable option for avoiding a default. You, however, called it, quote, dangerous nonsense and an illegal, foolish idea. Briefly explain for our viewers why you are so against it.
Well, yes, you made a political case, but you made no legal case at all. And I think the law here is absolutely clear. The President of the United States does not have the power to borrow additional money on the
Yeah. We're in fact, I'll even go back a little. He says president doesn't have the ability. I want to highlight one very important thing at the beginning here, and we're going to come back to it at the end because everything rests on that. 2 words. I think, he says. We're going to come back to it.
No legal case at all. And I think the law here is absolutely clear. The President of the United States does not have the power to borrow additional money on the credit of the United States without authorization from Congress. That is bedrock constitutional law. It comes from Article 1, Section 8, Clause 2. And the 14th Amendment has nothing whatever to do with this. The 14th Amendment does not mention the president. It does not authorize the president to do anything. And indeed, the 14th Amendment, Section 4, really has nothing to do with a debt limit crisis. What it provides is that the public debt of the United States the validity of the public debt may not be questioned. Well, even if we come to default, which I think is highly unlikely because I assume the actors here are going to negotiate a reasonable deal, but even if we did default, this would not question the validity of the public debt. When a borrower doesn't pay on time, the debt is just as valid as before. It just means that the debtor is in trouble.
So, Larry, you're peddling an illegal, dangerous, nonsensical idea, says Michael. He says it's a political argument, not a legal argument. What is your response to him?
Well, with all respect, I think Michael is completely wrong. Section 4.
Again, I just want to underline this because we are going to come back to it. What's the other guy say? Lawrence Tribe? I think. 2 of the most learned men that could be called to talk about this. I think and I think. These are opinions. We're going to come back to it.
The 14th Amendment was inserted when Abraham Lincoln realized that just as we need to completely raise lots of money beyond, and he had to expand the debt of the United States 80-fold in order to put down the insurrection. After the insurrection was put down, the same forces threatened to destroy the country from within by making it difficult for us to pay our debts. So the Constitution in Section 4 of the 14th Amendment made it clear that we would always pay our debts. Of course, the president doesn't have unilateral power to borrow. No one said he did.
Isn't it interesting that Republicans, conservatives, let's call them what they are by their lineage, their philosophical lineage. Conservatives are once again falling back on a playbook that they used in the Civil War. We're going towards the Civil War era in reverse. We're backing up into it. Because, conservatives are weak. They lost the war. They got their butts whipped by the good old boys in the Union. So what did they do? They tried to skip out on bills. That's what they tried to do. They tried to be bums. They tapped into their true selves, and they tried to be a bunch of debt-skipping bums. And they tried to make the rest of us as low and loathsome as they are, as a way to take the country hostage. So it's not a surprise to see, once again, conservatives, or rather the people that have taken over the Conservative Party, insurrectionists, are once again following that playbook. Very interesting. And not a surprise. I would assume that they are doing this intentionally. I think they look at the traitors to our country throughout history and say, "Oh, how can we be more like them?"
Federal power to borrow. No one said he did. But Congress has given him that power every time it passes a budget under something that Michael doesn't seem to be talking about, under the 1974 Congressional Budget Act, which was designed to prevent Nixon from refusing to spend money that Congress had told him to spend. Every time a budget is passed, it automatically sets both a floor and a ceiling. After 1974, the arbitrary ceiling that was set in 1917 really doesn't get in the way at all. There's a separate freestanding set of sections of 31 U.S. Code, Title 31, which affirmatively authorize the president to borrow money through the Treasury Department to make up the gap between the amount Congress has agreed to tax and the amount it has said he must spend. Those sections, 3102 through 3106, are in full effect. The other provision, which is a freestanding provision in section 3101 of Title 31, gets in the way, but it is a completely unconstitutional obstacle because it would make us basically deadbeats. It would make the president exercise what the Supreme Court has said he can't be given as a matter of separation of powers. And that is a line item veto. He'd have to decide which debts we pay, which debts we don't. Is he going to stiff the veterans or the Social Security recipients? That is a seizure by the president of the power of the purse. So I think Michael has absolutely every part of the argument wrong. And I think I'm being a lawyer here. That's what I've done for 50 years. And I think Michael has just missed the boat completely.
Michael, deal with the arguments Larry raised there, especially the line item veto point, the idea that it's unconstitutional for a president to be picking and choosing as we become deadbeats.
So when Congress has decided to spend more money than the revenues come in, they can authorize borrowing up, and they do, up to a certain a level, but not infinite, up to a certain level, and we've reached that. If you then reach that point, the president has the obligation, I think the constitutional obligation, but certainly a responsible obligation, which every president has recognized, to prioritize spending. That's what Secretary Yellen has been doing for the last several months, is to prioritize spending. And the very statute that Professor Tribe mentions, the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, authorizes the president to defer spending through the end of the fiscal year in the case of contingencies, which obviously this is as big a contingency as you can possibly imagine.
Out of curiosity, and I'll check the comments at the conclusion of this, but out of curiosity, does anybody else follow this right now? I think I've watched this 2 or 3 times, and I think after time number 2, I got a pretty good understanding of both of their arguments. But I'm curious, honestly, don't feel embarrassed here. Do you follow the arguments they're making right now? My summary of it so far is Tribe saying the 14th Amendment can absolutely be used to pay the existing debt because the people who decided that we have the debt let go of their authority to deal with it once they decided we have it. It's not a matter of whether or not we'll pay it. Their decision-making ability is tied to when they said we would pay it. Rather, when they said we would take it out. It's non-negotiable, in other words, and that the president would be given undue authority by then having to decide who we will pay of that limited group that will actually pay back. The other guy's saying, no. President would be given undue authority to pay the debt that we acquired under Trump. We're going to keep it going for a moment, but I want to be clear. The nuance here is poison to Democrats. It's absolute poison. Because I promise you, the other side does not look at it like this. The other side, the people that are holding the country hostage, they're not sitting here being like, oh, what's ethical? What's within the rights of the country? No, they're asking, what can we get away with? All of the things they say, all of their reasoning they put out, it's not actual reasoning that they have. It's just the excuse they've decided on. That's all Republican talking points are. They're just a series of excuses to rob the country, to take away your vote, to harass trans people, to attack homosexuals, to make black people terrified to walk outside. It's all just excuses to act like see you next Tuesdays. So when we're sitting here looking at these two talking about nuance back and forth, just remember the other side does not care at all. We're gonna conclude it in a moment.
And to send a message to Congress to that effect. But in the meantime, the real answer here is that he should negotiate with Congress. Congress has the power of the purse. All this nonsense about hostage taking is ridiculous, since the Congress is the branch of government that has authority for all of this. It is all within its control, and President Biden can veto, and he has political authority. But at this point, the only responsible thing is for him to sit down and negotiate and a set of spending cuts that'll be acceptable to both sides. We aren't facing a crisis. We're just facing a political problem.
Except it is hostage taking. I mean, it is. Whether or not we are going to pay the debts that Donald Trump racked up and his administration racked up was not in question until Republicans decided that they could refuse to do their duty in order to get undue political power. If they wanted to get the cuts to the budget, which would be, hacking apart your Social Security, defunding anything decent the American government does, and giving all the benefits, all the saved money, it really wouldn't be benefits, but all the saved money from that to billionaires. If they wanted to do that, the way to go about it would be to get a majority in the House and Senate. That's the correct way to dismantle the country, if that is what they want to go through with. Clearly it is. Remember what they said. Those two very learned people. I think. My thought, my theory, my interpretation of the laws. Okay. Let's take a page from the Republican playbook. Let's all contact Dark Brandon and say, just do the damn thing. Just do it. Use the 14th Amendment. Give your reasoning in line with what Lawrence Tribe said. And you know what? If Republicans want to cry and holler about it, let them. They want to push it all the way to the Supreme Court and let the Supreme Court debate it. Let them. Make them, in fact, take that responsibility on. Pay the debt now, immediately. Just pay it. And then let's have a debate about what we should have done, what would have been right, after we've already paid the debt. That's the way to deal with these folks. I had a coach back in the day. I did a kind of wrestling where you wear a I don't know how to describe it. Like a thick wool jacket as you're wrestling, and you're allowed to grab that wool jacket. In fact, that's part of it. But you're not allowed to hit anybody. But sometimes when you grab it, you do accidentally. You get a little knock in there. And I was wrestling with in a tournament with a kid, because I was a kid, that was throwing elbows when they were grabbing my jacket and they were turning their arm. Just coincidentally, their elbow kept going in my face. It's lumpy enough as is. And I looked. I was furious, and I eked my way through that match. I looked over at my coach, and he knew exactly what I was thinking. And he said, if the ref isn't calling elbows, in other words, elbow the son of a bitch. If the ref isn't calling elbows, elbow the son of a bitch. If Republicans are going to play by a different set of rules, rather than whining about the fact that they don't play by the rules they should be, we should beat them by not holding ourselves arbitrarily to those rules. If they're going to take the debt ceiling and be clowns with it, then just ignore them. Straight up ignore them. The thing for Biden to do is to use the 14th Amendment. Whether or not he truly believes what Lawrence Tribe says doesn't matter. Use it. And we can go back to having these nuanced, detailed conversations about what would be right, the way things ought to be done, yada, 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 when we are talking with people that are worth talking to. But right now, we're talking with a bunch of insurrectionist traitors. We're talking with a bunch of dishonest, racist scum. Treat them as such. And as the American people, we need to insist that the party that is in opposition to this scum act appropriately. We don't need to have all this stress right now. The stress is the point. They're trying to make it seem like the Biden administration is every bit as chaotic as the Trump administration to people who only pay attention a little bit. That's who they're going for. People who only kind of pay attention and also are bad human beings. That's their target with all this nonsense. So don't give them what they want. Don't give them the chaos. Don't give them the negotiating because they're going to negotiate in bad faith. Instead, the thing to do, just pay the damn debt. Pay it off. And then let them, in retrospect, say what ought to have been done. If the ref ain't calling elbows, use the damn elbows. See what the Wicked community has to say. Ooh. Perd Beer says, completely unrelated to your theme, but I spoke with my Syrian friends today, and they are all shattered with Assad being brought back into the fold. Oh. Yeah. I'm going to have to talk about Syria soon here. I kind of thought that country would be on an upswing, and it's not. It's wild to me. I have no idea why that guy is not just permanently in the history books. Zix says, Midas Touch, Ben, did a segment. Extremely disturbing reaction to a kid asking a question. Oh, interesting. Interesting. On Clay Higgins. All right, I'll have a look. Dean Oldfield, howdy. Good to see you. Andrew Then, hello. Good day to y'all. Patrick Kibido, good to see you. Does this guy think the president has the power to declassify documents by blinking eyes, like I dream of Genie? Yes. Yes, I agree. Dean Oldfield brings up an excellent point. Defer congressperson's salary first. Yes. I think we should make that a law. I think that is a law, by the way, that would be hilarious to make Republicans vote against. We should ask that our representatives put forward a law that makes their salaries the first to go. You're right. That's a great idea. Contact your representative. And look, is it going to pass? No. But you're going to find out who the scum is real quick, and you're going to make them out themselves, at least for a day, as horrible human beings. So that's a great idea. Oh, I got one more here for you. I'm excited about it. So look, I should probably do an intro. All right, I'll do an intro. 1 second. Well, we know that Republicans in the United States in 2023 are corrupt as hell. And they have the misfortune in the House of being able to hold committees and hearings. And generally try to make their case in a formal setting. I say it's their misfortune because they're a bunch of liars. They don't actually believe that there is corruption in Washington aside from what they do. They don't believe that the FBI is going after Republicans unfairly. They do believe they're going after Republicans because, Republicans are criminals. But they are in a position where they need to try to make a case to the American people now that all this conspiracy nonsense that they've been talking about is so somehow. I mean, after all, they got elected to make a big damn deal about all this stuff. Well, to do that, they have gathered a group of the most ridiculous, corrupt bums you have ever seen. There's an MSNBC clip that talks about it, that discusses who these people were recently that testified in Congress regarding the FBI, who these FBI whistleblowers are. Surprise, surprise, they're people that were themselves quite corrupt.
Congressman, it is as serious as it can be to have the Republicans in the majority using and misappropriating the word whistleblower. Can we start by talking about what these two individuals actually are? They sound like they have been reprimanded by the FBI and are viewed as a security concern.
So essentially, in this theater of the absurd, the Republicans provided a platform today for 3 disgruntled employees of the FBI to come and air their employment grievances. They did no such thing as whistleblowing. They are not whistleblowers. They don't deserve whistleblower protection. And frankly, each and every one of them has a strange history that merited action, employment action by the FBI because they became security concerns. That's why they had the security clearances pulled. And in some cases, essentially their employment status either demoted or put on hold because they were no longer considered reliable law enforcement agents.
The FBI agents testifying in the House Weaponization Committee, ridiculous, were themselves security concerns. In other words, these were bums that washed out, and now they're angry. Why did they wash out? Why were they security concerns? Because they were crazy as hell.
To give them this national platform today was bizarre at best, sordid at worst, and I don't think in any way helped the Republican narrative, conspiratorial narrative, that somehow the FBI is an agency of the deep state and doing the dirty work of liberal Democrats. I think what we witnessed today were 3 disgruntled employees who have strange beliefs, conspiratorial beliefs, have questioned, in many cases, the fundamentals that have been established in numerous courtrooms all across America and by the January 6th Commission. Even now, they believe it was instigated by the deep state. They blame Nancy Pelosi, which would come as news to Speaker Pelosi, who had her office trashed by the insurrectionists on January 6th and would have come to harm if they'd found her. And I think it would come as news to Vice President Pence. They wanted to hang him. They were running through the corridors of the Capitol calling for him. And had they found him, God only knows what would have happened. That's who these people are.
There was news developed and new information.
Hold up. Just want to comment on one thing. The takeaway from all of this is to not take unserious people. Let me try this again. Take unserious people seriously, but don't treat them as though they have serious opinions. In other words, you've got these people ranting and raving in Congress right now. If you're the opposition, yeah, you take the threat they represent seriously, but make it clear to the American people at every opportunity that they are clowns. And I have to congratulate the House of Representatives, the Democrats in the House of Representatives, for doing a great job of that. And I'm glad to see this being talked about here on cable television. But I really hope that Connolly's message here is understood. These people are clowns, and their opinions on these matters are worth just about nothing. Ridiculous.
Developed by the Democrats on the committee. Let me show you Congressman Dan Goldman sussing out who's supporting, and I'm not going to call them whistleblowers, these disgruntled former FBI officials. It's Kash Patel. Spoiler alert.
Mr. Friend, what about you? Do you know Kash Patel as well?
Yes.
And did you receive any money from Kash Patel?
Yes, he gave me a donation last November.
A donation?
Yes.
Are you a charitable organization?
I was an unpaid, indefinitely suspended man trying to feed his family, and he reached out to me and said he wanted to give me a donation.
He bribed him. That is a bribe. Kash Patel gave me money, and now I have an opinion that Kash Patel would like. Ridiculous.
Let me show you what was being said on television by Mr. Friend. This is him on Laura Ingram's show just this week.
I think the FBI has now been exposed as no longer an objective force for good. You know, here's a situation where they looked internally and decided that they were not going to consider any evidence to open a case because it was inconvenient for their preferred political candidate, and instead they targeted all their resources and all their focus on the individual that they viewed to be most problematic to the existing entrenched forces that we have within our intelligence community and our federal law enforcement that is so beholden to these growing budgets, as we've seen throughout the years as this mission creep has come home, and the weapons and the apparatchiks of our federal government have now been turned against the American population.
Quid pro whoa. I mean, this is a guy who's fired from the FBI. FBI is run by Christopher Wray, who was a Republican attorney in good standing, represented Chris Christie. Chris Christie passed his name along to Donald Trump. He's Donald Trump's handpicked FBI agent. So that's who Mr. Friend is mirroring and maligning this week on Laura Ingram's show. But to learn that he's being supported by a charitable donation, and he's not a charity, from Kash Patel, felt like today's bombshell.
Yeah, and the irony is he began by saying, I think the FBI has finally been exposed. Actually, it's Mr. Friend who's been exposed. He's been exposed for taking money and providing his testimony as a paid agent, if you will, of Kash Patel, who represents a right-wing ideology, a reactionary narrative, and who propounds a conspiratorial-filled agenda that is, I think, inimical to constitutional democracy, as we saw on January 6th. That's who this is. And if anyone's been exposed and anyone's been compromised, it's not the FBI, it's Mr. Friend.
What do we do?
What would you do? What would Republicans say you have to do if you got fired for your job from, betraying the very purpose of the job? If you were hired as a contractor to go build an extension on somebody's house, and you showed up at the house and you just started smashing holes in their living room drywall with a hammer. You're supposed to be building somewhere else entirely. You're not trying to fix it. You're just wrecking up the place, and you get fired. What would Republicans say you should do? Would Kash Patel give you a donation? No. It'd say you can go kick rocks. They'd say, go get another job. They'd say, you got 2 hands, 2 feet. Go walk down to the nearest McDonald's and start flipping burgers. That's what they'd say. That's who they are. But this guy they gave money to. He got fired from his job. Go find another job to support your family. No, they gave him money. And oh, look, now here he is in Congress saying exactly what they want him to say. Bribery is standard practice for Republicans. They are a criminal organization.
As a country, when only one of the country's 2 parties, and in the case of the House, it's the party in the minority, views the FBI suspending 2 individuals as a credible act, a justifiable act. What do you do if the House Republicans in the majority then take them and platform them and elevate them?
So I think it's important to remember that let's go back in time a little bit, right? So when Donald Trump becomes president, one of his first meetings is with James Comey, the head of the FBI. And he wants to meet with him privately and does, and basically tries to get him to suborn his own oath of office to render justice in a nonpartisan, objective way, and to compromise an investigation of his team. When Comey cannot give him that assurance, he fires Comey in a very dramatic and public way. And then, ironically, Christopher Wray, who's now being excoriated by the Republicans, is picked by Donald Trump to replace Mr. Comey. He's hardly a liberal Democrat. And the FBI has hardly been, a haven for liberal Democrats since its founding. J. Edgar Hoover was no liberal Democrat. And so the idea that all of a sudden the FBI has become a tool of the deep state and is cracking down on conservative ideology while propounding or protecting the alternative is absurd. And that's why I said, I think today was another exercise in theater of the absurd by the Republicans. I don't think they made any headway. And I think they actually exposed how flimsy and anemic their conspiracies are, and based on almost lunacy and disgruntled individuals at best.
Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. No notes for Mr. Connolly there. One of the things that made me interested in Canadian politics is their ability to avoid a two-party system. Their parliamentary, their way of doing things means that you can vote for people that align with your beliefs specifically, and trust that generally your beliefs are not going to be endangered. With our two-party system, we run the danger of the current scenario we're living through happening again and again. One party is corrupted. And so all decent people must vote for the non-corrupt party, or at least the less corrupt party. The problem. It's a problem. I don't think in our lifetimes we are going to be able to fundamentally change the way that American democracy works. But we do have the ability to change the way. Let me try that again. We're not going to be able to fundamentally change the way it's set up. But we do have the ability to change the way it actually functions by taking advantage of the primary system. Use primaries to get people with your specific beliefs in a position to run. We have primaries coming up. Participate in them. Go as far left as you can. The theme of the show today, all of it, is just to remember that you don't need to know every single thing. The kryptonite for people that genuinely care about the world is that they look for nuance. They're seriously approaching these matters. But we're up against people who are not seriously approaching these matters. We're up against people that throw elbows because they don't care if they're good at the sport. They just want to win. In fact, they don't even want to win. They just want to be called the winner. That means we have to be better than them, not only at playing fair, but also at playing dirty. We need to make them regret every single time that they break the rules. Kash Patel bribed this person. That is a bribe. gave him money. In exchange, he got testimony. Contact the Department of Justice. Tell them you want him investigated as well. Add him to the list. But generally speaking, just remember that fact. Kash Patel bribed the FBI agent who claimed to be a whistleblower, wasn't a whistleblower, but nonetheless calls himself that, and testified in front of Congress. Play that clip. Show that to people you're trying to sway. You don't need 100,000 reasons to not want a specific corrupt person in power. Just one is fine. Go to your friends who are on the fence, if you have any. If you've got people that seem to have been swayed by any of the Republican committees, show them that. Compare that to the people who were testifying in the January 6th committee. Use it, in fact, as a way to get more bang for your buck. You can simultaneously show somebody who's been uninformed why Republicans are bad and why Republicans are really bad. They bribed their person to come testify, their witness. And here's what it looks like when it's run properly. Here's some January 6th footage. Here's Cassidy Hutchinson. She worked directly for Donald Trump. Use that. Twist the screw. Twist the knife, I guess, would be another way to put it. But use the fact that the GOP is currently running a clown show to contrast for people the difference between these two parties and these two ideologies. One is an actual ideology, whether you agree with it or not. That's the Democrats. The other, it's just a power grab. Let's check out what the Wicked community has to say. Guitar Dog says, FBI director is almost always Republican. God help me, it's true. Lulu Girl says, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get another job. Yeah, that would be exactly what they'd say. Oh, definitely, says Dean Oldfield, based on lunacy. Wholeheartedly agreed. Mercy me. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a delight to return to the mic and see y'all again. I've had just a real hectic couple of days, but hopefully things will mellow out for a while. If you enjoyed the stream, I surely would appreciate a like, and if you'd like to see more of your old pal Jake, I generally tend to do this around 9 o'clock on weeknights. So subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification icon, a little bell icon there, and I'll see you next time. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake. You know I gotta jump in to say thank you, Lulu girl. I just saw that super chat. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Oh, I'll tell you, the people in the delighted to see that you'll be back as well. And by the way, delighted to see the Mad Magazine there. Oh, y'all are the best. I will indeed. See you next time.